I decided to take you here because someone from the Occupy movement is doing an alternative tour, and I wanted to come along to get a bit more information about Canary Wharf and through the eyes of the other people. Perhaps, I don't think he's a representative of the 99%, but he might be someone who might be able to articulate their feelings a bit more. I wanted to come in the store because I felt that I wanted to learn a bit more about Canary Wharf rather than just arriving here and making work about it. I thought I would come because I spent some time at Occupy and I heard they were doing the store. I thought it was important to hear their side of the story really, and to pick up some feelings on what it feels like for them. And this is the person who's going to be giving the tour. So what are your feelings on Canary Wharf as a whole?
I think you just need to look around you at these huge glass soulless buildings on this private estate to get some feeling for what Canary Wharf stands for. Everywhere we go in today's tour is within the London borough of Tower Hamlets, which is the borough with the highest rate of child poverty out of any local authority in the UK. And yet these buildings are full of millionaires who are wheeling and dealing with various financial products which have helped cause the financial crisis and the mess that we're in.
I want to sort of look at, I'm running with the idea that Canary Wharf is a sort of island, and there's in-groups and out-groups, and generally everyone in Canary Wharf is, or people, at least the people who work here, it has a sort of, is part of the in-group. So I'm sort of want to highlight the sort of contrasts. You could tell me more about how perhaps untouchable they are here.
I think there's no starker juxtaposition in the UK of great wealth and great poverty than there is in Canary Wharf. I work in a school just near here. You can see my school playground from these buildings, and yet they might as well be in different worlds. The estate itself, like you say, is an island which is untouchable. It's heavily securitized. As you'll see when we go around on our tour today, we'll be followed by probably more security guards than there are people on the tour. Even though it's illegal to do any form of protest here, there's an injunction against any form of protest, which is why we present this as a walking tour. And the Canary Wharf seems scared of public space, of public criticism, of public discussion. They seem more interested in closing off this private little island where banks and other financial institutions can get on with their work in privacy, away from the critique and the criticism of ordinary people. Okay, welcome to number 25 on the appropriately named Bank Street. Those of a nervous disposition should look away now, because this is one of the most cursed buildings in financial history. It was originally constructed for Enron, but of course Enron collapsed in a massive corruption scandal in 2001 before this building was even finished. However, that wasn't a problem, because the building was finished and they found somebody else to occupy this building. Any guesses which company they got to occupy this building after Enron? Lehman Brothers, congratulations, prize the gentleman there. This is the building which was used by Lehman Brothers between 2004 and 2008. Somebody somewhere has a plaque which apparently was sold for £28,000, which says 25 Bank Street, opened for Lehman Brothers by Gordon Brown, who came to open it as Chancellor of the Exchequer because they obviously thought that Lehman Brothers were onto such a good thing. Of course, as it turned out, they weren't onto a good thing at all. On September the 15th, 2008, this building was on the front page of every national newspaper in Britain, because bankers were coming out of here carrying cardboard boxes full of all their papers after Lehman Brothers collapsed, which started off the financial crisis. So what went wrong? To understand what went wrong, we need to understand a bit about magical, mysterious things called derivatives, which I'm hoping somebody else here will be better at explaining than me, but I'll have a crack and we'll see if anyone else can add anything afterwards. So in the old days, if you wanted to buy a house, you'd go to a bank and you'd arrange a mortgage, and over the years you would pay back your money to the bank. However, some banks got a clever idea. They realised they could sell on these mortgages to other banks and to other financial institutions. They didn't have to hold the original mortgage, they could pass it on. And some banks realised they could take lots of mortgages and bundle them all up together and roll them up like a big Swiss roll, and then slice them up into different pieces. And they created these massive financial products which contain thousands of different mortgage products sliced and diced in all sorts of confusing ways. Things called collateralized debt obligations. Sometimes they mix them together with other collateralized debt obligations and created things called CDOs squared, which are an even more confusing form of financial derivative. Now, if you're confused, you've got every right to be. I'm confused as well, and it's not just people like us. Andrew Haldane, who is the senior economist at the Bank of England, has estimated that to fully understand a collateralized debt obligation, you would need to read through 1 billion pages of data to understand all the different things that you were buying, all the different mortgages that were involved. So basically, nobody fully understands them. That was part of the problem. Lehman Brothers got heavily involved in the market for derivatives from the US housing market and got very, very heavily in debt. And then as soon as the US housing market started going down in 2006, 2007, Lehman Brothers found itself in big problems. And that's basically the reason why it ended up collapsing in 2008, because it had been assuming the housing market would always go up, and as soon as it started going down, it couldn't afford to pay everything it needed to pay. But the story doesn't end there, because the day after Lehman Brothers collapsed, a very big American insurer called AIG had to be bailed out by the US taxpayer. The reason they had to be bailed out is because they've been selling a form of insurance called credit default swaps, which are another kind of financial product. Unlike most insurance, credit default swaps can be bought by anybody, not just the person who owns the asset being insured. So normally, if you own a house, you're the only one allowed to buy insurance on that house. You can't go buying insurance at other people's houses. But a credit default swap, you can go buying insurance on other companies' risks of defaulting. So it's a bit like if I bought insurance on your house and was then hoping that your house would burn down in a fire. So this creates massive risk throughout the whole financial system. And it also, the other problem is it's very, very poorly regulated. It's not, people don't have very much information about it, and that means that even the regulators don't really know what's going on with the credit default swap market. So as soon as companies like Lehman started getting in trouble, companies like AIG started getting in trouble. And that's part of the way all these problems spread throughout the financial system. But anyone know who created the first credit default swap? Any guesses? If you look behind us at this lovely new building, the guys who've taken over this building, JP Morgan, were the guys who created the first credit default swap. They made it for ExxonMobil after the Exxon Valdez oil spill disaster in Alaska, when they needed to when Exxon needed a load of money to pay for damages from the oil spill. And so JP Morgan created a credit default swap for them, which was the first one. And of course they've now moved into this building. Now if I were you, I wouldn't buy shares in JP Morgan because this building, as we know, is cursed. So watch out for that. Anyway, but why would people, I forgot where I was. Why would banks get involved with all this risky debt? Why would they get involved with these complex products which even the bankers themselves didn't really understand? To understand that, we need to go over there. Okay, so you'll be pleased to know we just shut down the main entrance to the second tallest skyscraper in the UK with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us. I know some of you on this tour just for the architecture, so you'll be interested to know, as I've said already, this used to be the tallest building in the UK until the Shard overtook it last year, so it's no longer the tallest building. The original architect who designed it described it as a portal to the sky, a door to the infinite. Whereas Prince Charles, when he came here, he said, I personally would go mad if I had to work in a place like that. I'll leave it up to you to decide who was right, the architect or Prince Charles. But remember those complex derivatives we were talking about over there, those Swiss rolls of mortgage products all bundled up which no one really understands. This connects to this building over here because on floors 11 to 16 of this building is Moody's credit rating agency. Now the ratings agencies have been in the news a lot in the last few weeks. There are three main ones: of Moody's, Standard & Poor's and Fitch. And essentially what they do is they rate the riskiness of debt. It's their job to say how likely it is you're going to get paid back. That might be with things like mortgages products like the ones we learnt about over there. It might be the debt of an entire country, and countries across Europe are running scared of the credit ratings agencies at the moment. You'll have seen that France, for example, was downgraded a couple of weeks ago, and George Osborne's main argument for the cuts is that if we don't make cuts in our country, then our credit rating will also be downgraded by companies like Moody's, companies like Standard & Poor's. In fact, the New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman has said, there are two superpowers in the world today, in my opinion. There's the United States and there's Moody's bond rating service. The United States can destroy you by dropping bombs, and Moody's can destroy you by downgrading your bonds. And believe me, it's not clear sometimes who's more powerful. The New York Times columnist, not some kind of radical conspiracy theorist. So European governments at the moment are terrified of these agencies. And you might say, well, you know, all these agencies are doing is giving an opinion about the safety of debt. We shouldn't be shooting the messenger. But the problem is, Moody's and Standard & Poor's and the other ratings agencies are very, very bad messengers. In the run-up to the financial crisis, they got it badly wrong. Those collateralized debt obligations that we learn about over there, 90% of them were given a AAA rating. That's as safe as US government debt, the safest you could get. As it turned out, when the crisis came, they weren't very safe at all. And in the words of the US Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission set up by the US Congress, this crisis could not have happened without the ratings agencies. So we owe a lot of thanks to Moody's and the other ratings agencies for their role in causing the crisis. But was it just that they were incompetent, or was there something else going on? The thing about ratings agencies is the way they make their money, the way they make their profits, is they are paid by the people who want their debt rating. So if you've created a new financial product, which is probably a bit risky, but you know, you want to make it look safe, you go to the ratings agency and you pay them to give your product a rating. Maybe AAA if it's really safe, or lower grades if it's not so safe. And you want your product to be really, really safe, to look really like a really good product to buy. And so Moody's and the other ratings agencies make their profit from the people whose debt they're rating. It's a conflict of interest because they've got an incentive to say your debt's really safe so that they'll get more customers, so more people will come to them and say, yeah, we want you to rate our products. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? And so in fact, in the run-up to the financial crisis between 2002 and 2006, Moody's share price doubled and its revenue tripled. It was making money from dishing out all these AAA ratings all over the place, even though the products it was rating didn't deserve a AAA rating at all. They were much more risky than that. And so people didn't really know about the scale of the risk that they were taking on when they were buying some of these products. And Moody's has to share a lot of the blame for that. But is that the full story? Is there anything else about why these banks were taking on all this debt? To understand more, you need to go over there. Right. Welcome to Citigroup, which is only here thanks to a $45 billion bailout by US taxpayers, otherwise it wouldn't exist as a bank. It's a bit embarrassing, considering that massive bailout, it's a bit embarrassing that they have 427 subsidiaries in tax haven. Yes, 427 subsidiaries in tax haven. That information comes from the US Accountability Office, which is an arm of the US government. That's not from some kind of radical NGO. I've even got for you the list of all the subsidiaries they've got. They've got one in Aruba, 60 in the Bahamas, one in Bahrain, 2 in Barbados, 19 in Bermuda, 35 in the British Virgin Islands, 90 Citigroup subsidiaries in the Cayman Islands alone, okay, 12 in the Channel Islands, and so on. I'm not going to read out the whole list, but that gives you some idea of how Citigroup manages to dodge tax while still being bailed out by US taxpayers. But we'll talk more about tax avoidance a bit later when we get to Barclays. For now, at Citigroup, we're going to talk about something else. Chuck Prince, who was the former boss of Citigroup, in the run-up to in the boom years of the mid-noughties, he said, as long as the music is playing, you've got to get up and dance. And that's the way that lots of these banks were operating. They were looking at other banks around them and thinking, hey, everyone else is taking on massive debts, buying risky products. We should do the same thing as well, because as long as everyone else is doing it, the market will keep going up and it will be fine. Of course, it wasn't fine. It all went horribly wrong. And it was a kind of a classic mania. You might have heard in 17th century Holland, there was the famous example of people buying up tulips and the price of tulips boomed and then it all collapsed. The same kind of thing that you've seen in financial markets throughout history was going on in financial markets over the last 10 years. And in fact, while it was doing that, Citigroup was misleading clients about products. There's been a recent case in the US courts where they've been misleading clients about products. But again, as long as the market's booming, there's this sense that we can get away with what we want because no one's really going to find out unless things start going wrong. But the debt boom wasn't just about human irrationality in financial markets and manias. It was also about a problem of structural inequality. There was a report published by analysts at Citigroup a few years ago, and the report was called Revisiting Plutonomy. By plutonomy, they mean a system of rule by the rich, and by plutonomists, they mean the top 1% of the richest people in the world. And they said in their report that asset booms, a rising profit share, and favourable treatment by market-friendly governments have allowed the rich to prosper and take an increasing share of income and wealth over the last 20 years. That's Citigroup saying that. They say, we believe that the rich are going to keep getting richer in coming years as capitalists or the rich get an even bigger share of GDP as a result principally of globalization. So those guys in there, they know what's going on. They know that they're getting richer and that other people aren't. And in fact, wages have stagnated across many developed economies for the last 30 years, especially in the US, but to some extent in the UK as well. And in the UK, the poorest tenth have seen their incomes fall over the last decade, while the top tenth have seen their incomes increase by 40%. So the gap between rich and poor has been widening. And that's obviously a problem. Just to illustrate that as well, while we're here, I strongly recommend, if you get the time, you have a read of the How to Spend It magazine from the Financial Times. Have anyone seen this magazine before? It's interesting. Basically, it's aimed at the wealthiest people who buy the Financial Times. I'm sure most Financial Times readers can't afford the things in here. And it's full of all kind of luxury products you can buy. I had a copy just before Christmas where 25% of the pages were either adverts for or articles about luxury watches. Can anyone guess how much the most expensive watch cost? More. Not quite 1 million. £442,000 for a watch. So while some people are losing out from the crisis, other people seem to be continuing to do very, very well indeed. But this problem of inequality, part of it means that ordinary consumers don't have as much in their pay packet relative to others as they did before. And so people are looking for ways of keeping up with the Joneses next door. And that's where the idea of credit and the expansion of credit comes in, because people are suddenly getting credit cards because they think they need to keep buying all these new products, these new iPods, new iPhones, new iPads, new everything else, yeah? And at the same time, if you're a bank, it becomes less profitable to invest in making stuff because demand in the economy is held back by low wages. It becomes more profitable to invest in complicated financial products which are created based on all this debt. And that's part of the reason that all these new financial products are suddenly appearing because of the lack of effective demand from low wages, which means that suddenly it's more profitable to just mess around with finance rather than actually make something productive. But we're told it's fine. We're told it's fine that some people are getting rich because all the money will trickle down. As we're going to find out on our next stop, it doesn't trickle down, it seeps out. So that's where we're going to go next. Also this lovely flowery symbol. I always think it looks like the front of something for low-fat spread or something. Actually, it's BP, Beyond Petroleum, they assure us. This isn't their main London offices, so we're not going to make a long stop here. But it is one of their London offices. And they say on their website that 20 Canada Square, that's this building, has received awards for its green office initiatives, such as its integrated print, copy and archive solutions to minimise paper waste. So they've got more efficient photocopying, which just about makes up for the Deepwater Horizon oil spill and investing in Canadian tar sands, the dirtiest fuel on the planet. Or maybe it doesn't make up for it, who knows. Welcome to Barclays, which is, this is the global headquarters of Barclays Bank. And I always say it's like in a James Bond film, the underground cave where the bad guy hides with all the rockets before he destroys the world. This is the financial equivalent of that. You know, this is the evil super base of global finance. The building was originally going to be 50 stories high, but it was being constructed during the September 11th attacks, and so they then decided to make it shorter to only 32 stories. Apparently the guys who work in the HSBC building down there refer to Barclays as the bungalow. In the interest of balance, we're going to tell you some good things about Canary Wharf and some bad things about Canary Wharf. Now, the good things is that on the roof they have a garden which is friendly to wildlife with grass and plants to attract birds. And that's about it for the good things. What about the bad things about Barclays? Well, in 2009 there was leaked documents which suggested that Barclays is systematically avoiding tax. In the words of one commentator, the documents suggest a deeply ingrained culture of tax avoidance. The Barclays team looks like the spider at the centre of a highly artificial web of non-transparent transactions through tax havens. Reputable banks don't turn tax avoidance into a profit machine. Any guesses who it was who said that? It was none other than Vince Cable, now business secretary in the coalition government, in the days before he lost the backbone and gained a ministerial car. So, of course, Barclays say all this stuff is exaggerated. They say, look, you know, we're not avoiding tax, it's all exaggerated, blah, blah, blah. Which is why it's a bit embarrassing that on Barclays' own website, they boast about how they helped Ghana become sub-Saharan Africa's first offshore tax haven. Last year, Ghana decided to abolish this whole relationship with Barclays because they were concerned about the effects it was having on money laundering. And Barclays Wealth, which is just across the road, just round there, the other side of Jamie's Italian restaurant, that's Jamie Oliver's Italian restaurant. Barclays Wealth, which is their kind of wealth management division, it says on their website, this is the words of Barclays Wealth, we're committed to meeting the needs of wealthy clients and those aspiring to become wealthier, which is all of us, surely. With teams based in key financial jurisdictions, from the Channel Islands to Switzerland, Cyprus and Gibraltar, we can facilitate your international trading and help you make the most of business opportunities. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell you what key jurisdictions like the Channel Islands and Switzerland and Cyprus and Gibraltar are famous for. Basically, if you read between the lines, they're saying, we'll help you dodge your tax. It says Barclays Wealth has a commitment. So, and there's even, I've got this from the actual website. It's got here, open an offshore bank account. This is from the Barclays Wealth website. And I actually phoned them up one time we did this tour. I'm not going to do it today, but if you want to phone them up, there's a number there. I got through to a man called, I think it was Greg, he said his name was. And I said, I'd like to open an offshore bank account, please. And he said, okay. How much would you like to save? And I said, oh, £50,000. And he said, great. For £50,000, we can get you a special personal advisor. And I said, can you explain to me about the tax benefits I receive? And he said, well, we'll make sure your money's invested in the Isle of Man and Jersey. And then he said, and these are his exact words, he said, I know it sounds cliched, but we'll help you make the most of your money. And it's obvious what he meant by that. He meant we'll help you dodge tax. So if anyone wants to open an offshore bank account, there's the number. It's estimated that £25 billion is lost to the UK alone from tax avoidance every year. Okay? Obviously that's other companies than Barclays, but it's a massive, massive issue. Anyway, we're running out of time at Barclays, so I've got no time to mention that they paid 110 million to just 5 staff last year. I've got no time to mention that they're Britain's largest arms investor with £7.3 million of investments in the arms trade, including with producers of cluster bombs and depleted uranium. I've got no time to mention that they're helping the son of the president of Equatorial Guinea loot that country's oil revenues. I've got no time to mention that they paid $298 million to the US government in 2010 after admitting money laundering. I've got no time to mention that they make up to £340 million a year from speculating on the price of food. And I've got no time to mention they're heavily involved in propping up the government of Robert Mugabe. So it's a shame that we're running out of time because I can't mention all of those things. Okay. Right, welcome to KPMG. This apparently is one of the greenest buildings in the UK, so it's not all bad. It was opened not last December, the December before that, by the Queen herself. Now, I don't know about you, but I find it slightly ironic that the Queen, a woman who lives entirely upon tax receipts, would open a building for KPMG, which has the company which holds the world record for the largest ever fine for criminal tax evasion. In 2005, KPMG had to pay $456 million to US authorities for criminal tax fraud. Of course, they say we've changed since then, but on their website, they make a big thing about their global transfer pricing services. Anyone know what transfer pricing is? Essentially, the basic idea is that you should only pay tax once. So if you're working in several different countries, you shouldn't pay tax in one country and then pay the same tax for the same thing in a different country. Okay? So they try and work out where you're making your profits. So if you're making most of your profits in Australia, then you get taxed on them in Australia, and then not so much in Britain if you're operating in Australia and Britain. They're trying to divvy up where you're making stuff. And so the thing about multinational companies is that they are operating in many, many different countries, and they're trading between themselves, trading within the same company, so selling like a half-made phone from one bit of the company to another bit of the company where they're going to put it all together, to another bit of the company where they're going to package it, to another bit of the company where they're going to sell it. And that means these things are going into all these different places, and no actual transaction is taking place. So the company, the multinational, can make up a notional price for how much one bit of the company is selling to another bit of the company for. So they can make up a price for, that one subsidiary is selling the half-made phone to another subsidiary, and so on. And these notional prices are called the transfer prices, the transferring from one tax jurisdiction to another. But the problem is, because these prices don't have to bear any relation to reality, the company can fiddle around with it so that it makes it look as though it's making all its profits in a country with very low tax and all its losses in a country with very high tax. And that means it ends up paying a lot less tax, basically avoids loads of tax. And so it fiddles around with the prices that it's selling from different bits of the company to other bits of the company. For example, a kilogram of toilet paper has been sold from China at $4,121. A litre of apple juice has been sold from Israel at $2,052. And ballpoint pens have been sold from Trinidad at $8,500 each. Of course, that's not the real prices, but that's the price they filled in the accounts to make it look as though they were making their profits in some areas and not in other areas. It doesn't always get that extreme. They do it in quite subtle ways, but they're trying to manage it so they have to pay less tax. And KPMG boasts on their website, it says, "We help multinationals develop and implement commercially sensible, fiscally efficient transfer pricing policies and assess the impact on their overall tax position." Again, read between the lines, they're helping you dodge your tax. Okay? Transfer pricing isn't always bad, but the way it's being done is. But it's not just about tax, because KPMG is one of the 4 big auditors, the others being Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers and Ernst & Young, and its job is to audit company accounts. And between them, the big 4 auditors have carved up the market. Out of the top 100 FTSE 100 companies in the UK, 99 of them are audited by just those 4 firms. And on average, a FTSE 100 company changes its auditor every 49 years, so very, very rarely. So it's not a very competitive market, and the big 4 auditors can basically get away with doing what they want. They've got a very, very cozy relationship with some of the companies they're supposed to be auditing. And so in the run-up to the financial crisis, you'd have thought that the auditors who are looking at all these company accounts would have spotted something going wrong. They didn't. They saw absolutely nothing, or at least they said they saw absolutely nothing. Because of that, they came under pressure come under criticism from a far left pressure group, otherwise known as the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee, who accused the Big Four auditors of a dereliction of duty in the run-up to the crisis. And the House of Lords went on to say that either they were culpably unaware of the mounting dangers, or they equally culpably failed to alert the supervisory authority of their concerns. In other words, the Big Four auditors like KPMG were either incompetent or negligent, and that contributed to the crisis. So you probably think these aren't the kind of guys that we'd want interfering with our social policy, with our education system, with our health system. But unfortunately, firms like KPMG are increasingly influential in the provision of public services. They're pushing academies and the privatisation of education. KPMG even runs an academy in Hackney, jointly with the City of London Corporation. They run an academy with a specialism in financial services, they say. And the head of healthcare at KPMG, a man called Mark Bricknell, is one of David Cameron's closest advisors about health reform. He's on record as saying the NHS will be shown no mercy, and the best time to take advantage of this will be in the next couple of years. And this guy is sitting in meetings with David Cameron discussing health policy. I personally don't think that, you know, KPMG, they might know a bit about finance. I don't think they should be involved in health or education policy. I don't know what you guys think. Any more questions about KPMG or any more things to add before we move on to our final stop? No?
I think the tour has been really helpful for me, just in articulating a few of the things that I couldn't do myself. The person who took us around was incredibly informed about Canary Wharf, and he had a strong political stance. And I'm not sure if I want to reveal the political stance in my work, but it was nice to speak to someone who did have that. This week I've been thinking about, whilst going towards one piece, I sort of had an idea of another one, and I've been weighing these two ideas up. One is of the one I had this week was of doing the Titanic sinking into a pile of money, because for me it represented the difference between rich and poor, almost being like the levels on a boat. And everyone knows what happened when the Titanic sunk. It was the rich got away and saved their legroom, and everyone else drowned. And that, for me, was like a metaphor for the economic crisis. And I think it would have made a lovely sculpture as well. The sort of back end of the Titanic sinking into lots of coins. But I think it was almost. There's a few reasons I didn't do it. I think it's too blatant. It's also, there's the Italian cruise liner that sunk quite recently. It's too topical for that. So that's not the way we'd want to go down. But also because it's too succinct. It's almost like a statement. You know, I was talking before about statements, and not questions, but abstract platforms. If I was to do the Titanic thing, it would be too statement-y. There wouldn't be any room for thought. So I think, and talking to Liam today when he was taking us around, he was pushing the island idea, and he also said, I was in accord that he felt it was like an evil layer. Like something in James Bond, and that's something I'm quite interested in as well, having like almost like a comical place, but where the baddie lives. So I think I might go towards that a bit more, and go for, build an island rather than a sinking Titanic. And the island has got connotations with offshore islands. It's also, I might. There's lots of things that I'm thinking about. I've started making the island now, using quite complicated processes, using computer programs, 3 different computer programs. I've designed it on the computer first, and I'm starting to make it. I'll probably, when I've got some pictures and things like that, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But yeah, I've designed it now, and I've cut out all the pieces, so to start making. So I'm quite excited.
But you spoke with people in the city last week. You interviewed some people.
Oh.
And you don't feel you want to interview people here in this around Canary Wharf?
I got quite a bad reaction when I went around the Occupy movement. It was nice to talk to Liam today because he was it was actually what I was hoping for when I went to the Occupy movement. So in that way it was helpful because I found him. I suppose it would be good to meet people that are from the other persuasion. But one of my best friends and oldest friends works for Barclays in that building, and he's and we talk about it, and we talk about these sorts of problems, and he is. For me, he is the other side of it, but he is the most loveliest guy in the world. He's my best friend, and he relinquishes responsibility. He doesn't like to associate it with what's going on above him. He feels powerless within his own company, and that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at systems, or perhaps organic systems, almost like he was talking about capital looking after itself, and that's what I want to look at. I want to see it as that capital is an organic system. I'm playing around with some visual language and some metaphors, and one is of crystals. And crystals for me, one being a precious stone, they're also, the way they're formed is by replication. Everything's just doing what has been done before, and then you end up with these beautiful, massive gems. Yeah, like these gems. And I think I might make a link. I don't want to give you all the answers, but that's something I'm angling towards. Crystals.